Hi there. Welcome to the intro overview of your exercise and endocrine system video lecture. What we'll start with is just getting a sense of what is the endocrine system actually involved in and how that might affect exercise and our exercise physiology. So one of the main things that you've probably already come across is the use of anabolic drug use in sports, so like testosterone, steroids, similar thing. So that's probably where you've seen it or come across it already, and that has heavily in part to do with your endocrine system. Other things, insulin resistance, so for example, diabetes and metabolic syndrome, which are related to your insulin use or resistance. Again, that's to do with diabetes and the way that we take glucose into our cells for energy. As you know from one of our earlier units and a topic that keeps coming up, in order for glycolysis to occur, we need glucose. So very important, and our endocrine system dictates a lot to do with those two things. Then we get into areas such as menopause and andropause, or low testosterone. So andropause is the male equivalent of menopause. You might have heard of menopause, and these have to do with our sex hormones. So in particular, andropause with testosterone and menopause with estrogen. We'll speak about that, but those have big effects on our physiology and, of course, therefore, our exercise phys. Diabetes, again, tied up into, these two insulin-related conditions, and muscle atrophy or muscle hypertrophy. So when we're talking about our endocrine system, because it's a whole body-wide system that is a messenger system, essentially, that will affect both of these as well. So losing muscle and building muscle. So how does it do all of this? Well, quite simply, it's a messenger system sent to the whole body. So it's kind of like a loudspeaker announcement that goes from a effector organ that releases the signal and will find its target recipients in specific receptor cells. But this message can potentially be received by multiple systems in our bodies, or endocrine receivers throughout our entire body. So it's, again, like a whole, it's like a big, I'm trying to think of like the social media equivalent. It'd be, if one of the social media platforms put an announcement out on everybody's Facebook or target people's Facebooks with targeted ads, and it can go worldwide, versus something like a nerve signal, which is very direct. It's a one-to-one, or has a very specific response that is elicited through that nerve. So yeah, it sends messages in the form of hormones to receptors. Again, it affects our physiology and affects the way that our body adapts to exercise. And exercise, of course, has a positive, I say of course, but it truly does have a positive influence on our endocrine function, primarily through increasing hormone sensitivity, which is a good thing, which means we need less of a signal to get our desired response, and a more timely response to the changes that we want to have incur, as well as our capacity to synthesize, so to make, as well as store hormones increase, so that we can have a greater amount at times of need when we want those hormones. Now, if we take a look at what that looks like when we're in competition, so we have this fight or flight response that our sympathetic nervous system gets queued up for, and our psychological component has a big impact on that. Our brain knows if we're in actual competition or if we're just in practice. And so that will be heightened and queued up through our endocrine response, correlationally to that, or in response to that, sorry. So when we're getting aroused or in a state of competition, or hyped up for for sport and competing in sport, our endocrine is a big part of that, and it's primarily through our catecholamines, which we'll chat about a bit later. But it has a whole body adrenergetic effect. So what does that mean? That means our fight or flight system, which again we spoke about with our sympathetic nervous system. But these hormones also have less of a direct kind of quick response, but a wider scale, longer lasting effect. And so we get things like elevated heart rate and essentially just our body's ready and prepped for competition and exercise. And the more intense that our physical activity that our body demands, the greater the preparatory adjustments that occur in this as well. It's kind of a cool response that, again, even just starting to think about exercise will start getting our body prepped for it. Okay, so next up we'll dive into a bit more of the anatomy and physiology of our endocrine system.